After watching and being inspired by a billion Polyglot Speaks This Amount of Languages videos, then feeling bad about my progress, and then feeling so bad I tried to push those same feelings away by creating my own version of that same video, it dawned on me as I was looking back on that version of myself 2 years ago that I was lying behind the camera, not only about the capacity of my language learning skills, but also how I was truly doing. And as my channel has started growing and seeing that that is the second popular video on my channel, I recognize that this video no longer aligns with my values or who I am. And today I just wanted to give you a very transparent behind the scenes look of making that video, as well as what I've learned as a decade-long consumer of all this heavily goal-oriented, metrics-focused, productivity-based language learning content. Now, a disclaimer, I am not accusing anyone else of feeling the way that I do, who made similar polyglot check videos in the past. I'm not accusing them of lying about their skills, or that they're somehow not living by their own values, or that they're a bad person for posting such a thing. I don't know them. And that's the thing, we really don't know what's going on in any other language creators' lives. The only thing that we can be sure about is how we feel about it after watching another person's content, whether or not they meant for us to actually feel that way or not. Of course, we can always say, I wish that people would be just more transparent and honest with their language learning and all the struggles and hardships that they face, which I see a little bit more of that in the language learning communities that I follow. However, there is definitely a barrier to this because we just can't and shouldn't expect everyone to talk about absolutely everything going wrong in life, especially when we are at our worst periods. Probably the last thing that we want to do is just turn on a camera and tell the world about it. For me too, I definitely cannot do this. I have to process a lot by myself before even sharing it with you guys. But we do know that despite all this, creators can choose what they show us. And when they do, they have specific energy for creating these types of content ideas and videos. We just know we're left with an unfinished story. Literally a 30-second preview to a 50-year-long film of someone's life that is constantly evolving. And we know that usually these stories, either intentionally or unintentionally, downplay or overemphasize the reality and the journey behind what we are actually seeing. So in saying all of this, the first thing that I want to highlight with making my own personal video, I knew I would be crossing a fine line of being a creator and either inspiring others or lowering others' self-esteem. I didn't know if I was going to do one or more of the other thing. I just knew what was working at the time that I came into YouTube, and I just knew I wanted to start a language learning channel and didn't really know what else to talk about on such a channel besides what I already saw was working. I also really didn't know what values I stood for in my own language learning and was just really figuring it out. I was also at the same time drowning in perfectionism and my own feelings of anxiety and unworthiness. I had the constant urgency to just keep on learning languages, keep on learning these grammar concepts as perfectly as possible, never really stopping, and also just drowning in the numbers game, the metrics, the comparison, and wanting to keep on achieving without even acknowledging what I had achieved in the past. And there came a time where my body was like, I have to escape from all of this. And of course, I chose the probably less beneficial method of coping because I chose to make this video in response to all of that. My brain was like, I can escape these feelings by having other people compliment me and validate me from the outside, and then my inner thoughts and inner self-esteem will feel better. But as the saying goes, hurt people, and I feel like with me in this situation, we could rephrase this to say, hurt people mask this hurt, hoping other hurt people will cheer them on and make up for their lack of self-esteem. And even at the point where I actually started filming the video, I filmed it like 3 or 4 times. I had the bucket of languages to make it seem a little bit more authentic for speaking spontaneously in each of those languages. However, I had already filmed that video like 3 or 4 times because I was constantly criticizing myself, blaming myself for not having enough energy to film it like 3 or 4 times and still show that amount of energy. There was always a trend that I saw in polyglot check videos where they were very animated and they could switch effortlessly between languages. It really didn't seem that they were searching for any term, or looking up at the ceiling and all of just those telltale signs that someone is thinking about what they want to say. I had a very narrow definition of what confidence was, exactly what I had saw others people doing in the at least YouTube language learning community. And honestly, I feel like I still talk pretty slow when I talk in other foreign languages, no matter if I am a beginner, intermediate, or advanced learner. But in this video, I tried to talk as fast as possible while still looking at ease somehow and not looking panicked, and trying to mask all of this perfectionism and imposter syndrome that was welling up as I filmed the video. Overall, it was a very unenjoyable enjoyable experience, to say the least, because of this hyper criticism and being hyper focused on everything that I perceived to go wrong. I wanted compliments, but I was also deathly afraid of judgment and negative confidence that would affect my very broken self-worth at that time. I was really in my head afterwards, and even during the edited process, I did edit it pretty heavily, being just as critical as I was while filming the video as I was editing everything and just playing back things that I didn't like about what I said, saying, oh, this wasn't fast enough, or I used the wrong pronunciation here, or I left out a word there. And in saying all of that, and probably with you guys who have stuck with me for a while on my channel as you've seen it grow, you know that I probably, with my value set that I have now, that I'm more in tune with and aligned with and try to live by, I would not make a video like that today. But I also think it's interesting to see how people evolve, and I really support people's evolution too. I really thought about taking that video down, but I did decide to leave it up in the end because it's okay to show other people that I am changing. Change is inevitable, and really just to let others know I am human too. I really didn't have it all figured out. None of us really do behind that curated image that content creation and social media in general like to create the illusion. And this topic of really celebrating language learners and how they evolve and how they get to know themselves authentically within their languages. That is a process that I am diving a lot more deeper now into what I create on my channel, really reminding others that the present and the future are not fixed for us and that our mindset really makes the difference. And so I thought, maybe having this video still up from 2 years ago would show as well my embodiment of a concept that I preach. So if you have felt a lot worse after watching those kinds of polyglot videos, what can you do about it? Very first thing is keep your feelings in perspective. It's not your fault that you feel the way that you do. We aren't in control of how we grew up, nor what societal messages we internalized as kids going into adult, trying to always do, be, achieve the most in the quickest, most effective, most entertaining, most creative way as possible. I don't even know what I'm forgetting, but you guys get the idea, right? It is all of these things plus more that we were raised with being overachievers for, and that overachievement would always yield rewards for us, more than other people who wouldn't appear to be doing as much as we were doing. And in fact, I must admit, there was a big part of my brain that really liked watching those polyglot videos, even though I felt bad after watching so many of them. It felt normal and comfortable for me to talk and also see others talk about languages in quantifiable terms. Kind of like if I were looking at my high school grades again and seeing things tangibly measured with my achievement, which also seeing that on paper and quantified that way made my self-esteem go up in high school. When in reality, language is so much more tied to our identity, our humanity, our lives in general. They're so much tied to the narratives really that we tell ourselves about them. And all these narratives, of course, form our own sense and perception of reality. But the truth is, language cannot be quantified and simplified so neatly by numbers, no matter how many times us humans have tried to do through standardized tests, routines, metrics. But we humans do like what we're used to, right? If we like numbers or grades, or we were raised with a family or societal values who liked high productivity or high achievement for achievement's sake, or grew up being very exposed to consumerism and capitalism all in one, it feels good to quantify languages in that way because it feels like we have more control, and we keep aiming for higher and higher and going more and just pushing harder instead of standing still for just for a little bit and investigating deeper into our own thoughts, why we are all doing this in the first place. And if we do that right and stand still, it might not feel as good as first. Also because we're not stuck in this loop of endless productivity, but also because we have to admit that these polyglot videos maybe aren't serving us as well as we initially thought when we first discovered them. We have to admit that maybe we're not in control of everything that goes on in language learning, whether that be chronic illness or ADHD. If you're a heritage language learner, there are so many emotions that we cannot fix by just a study routine. We can't control what society we were raised in, or when life just happens and depletes our energy and time. The second thing I want us to all be aware of is beware of believing unfinished stories, both your own story and other people's stories, right? Because we have the amazing capacity as humans to think complex thoughts about how to fill in gaps to other people's story and to make another person's unfinished story as logical and as understandable to us. And depending on our traumas or our mental struggles right now, we will fill in gaps with imagined information that makes us feel bad about ourselves and confirms to us within our own story that we are way behind from this person, that we don't deserve or will never get to what this person has achieved. We've done less than them. We think that their goals should also be our goals because they seem so impressive to us. Other examples of this would be, oh, they learned Russian in 6 months. I bet they're going to learn German in another 6 months. I bet they have great memory. They must have never struggled with this type of grammar because they learned everything so fast. And in trying to piece together someone else's story, as I've mentioned before, we also fill in our own. We also fill in our own limiting beliefs about ourselves, especially when we do feel anxious or discouraged or in an otherwise very high emotional state. It is more likely for us to take our feelings as facts about us and reconfirm to ourselves how incapable we are to that other person. They're doing great. Oh, well, that means I'm not doing good enough. They learn so fast. Why am I learning so slow? They have a near native accent. That must mean a native accent is the only and/or best metric to measure my language learning success by. It's the only one that matters. I won't ever have that, so my achievements don't count as much. But I want all of this, and this is as much a reminder to me as it is to others out there, take other stories just as anecdotes and know that there are gaps, advantages, disadvantages that we will never know about another person's language learning story. And also, in saying that, take your own story as unfinished and ever evolving. Others won't know the ins and outs of your own story better than you will, and you'll never be done rewriting your story, and you can do that at any time. It is the one that you can control, which, speaking of which, no, you can't control everything in your studies, but you can control your mindset, your boundaries, and your outlook. This was a true game changer for me, which helped me get to know a lot more of my authentic self within my own languages. Instead of going towards whatever I saw others doing that seemed like the right thing or the best thing to do. And helping you do the same thing is truly my mission for Language Travel Adoptee and where it is heading as it grows. So I invite you to decompress when others are making you feel bad, unsubscribe, unfollow when you are feeling less inspired than when you watch the beginning of that video or that reel. Take that break from a specific language. Reevaluate what you're feeling away from any distraction. Emotions are there for us. We just have to show our own selves patience and listen. Another thing I want us to keep in mind is know that there are multiple ways to do life, language learning included. There's all kinds of pressure around us, and we can realize that even as we are making big life transitions from college, where you think, oh, I should be doing the same career as that person. This person is getting further than me. I'm this many years old and I still have not achieved what this person after college has achieved. We feel pressure to conform to what society finds beautiful. We feel the pressure to be productive for the sake of just doing something. And after we have had so much exposure to the same thoughts, the same ideas, the same ways that language learning is being represented and talked about, we all eventually want to conform to certain ways to study, certain limited ways to find success, limited ways to just be and show confidence in your language. And all of that is most likely not aligned to who we really are as human beings and what would be best for our personalities. And most of these defined perimeters are then, in a way, used against us so that we do feel like we aren't doing something and will buy something else that will make us get to the result faster to make up for our perceived lack of not doing enough or not being good enough. And I guess really that's the beauty of life and really just getting older, as I see it, is finding out more and more every year who you really are, accepting what you see and what you find, practicing taking off those layers that society, that trauma, that internalized messages and other people have made you or convinced you to put on, and really just constantly adjusting to what you find underneath. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing in language learning. There are multiple ways to be authentically you in your languages, and you always have the freedom to choose what next step for you is most right in your language learning to take. And if going behind the scenes of this language learning content wasn't enough, make sure to check out this next video and you'll discover why my learning Spanish in 6 months actually caused me more harm than good.